graduates. I wish somebody had taught me how to read a budget. I wish somebody had taught me how to supervise the staff. I wish somebody said something about insurance liability and those kind of day-to-day kinds of challenges that come. I'm working with a pastor now who said, you know, I've never had to oversee staff before. I've had to preach, I've had to teach, I've had to counsel, and I can do that well. But staff intimidate me, and I'm not sure what to do with them. So we'll have just a few moments of conversation around that detail as well. Part of that will be around the fundraising side, the stewardship side, and we'll have a kind of a quick piece on that, okay? Returning to Everett Rogers just for a little bit, in understanding the prior conditions and preconditions and the characteristics of the decision-making unit, what you just did, what you just experienced, that is part of the scanning, the environmental scanning that goes on as we try to see where are we, how are decisions made here, and then how do we work with those decisions. As the 5 different areas of characteristics of innovation, as they are the typical kind of approaches when we try to convince folks to consider, to be persuaded towards a new reality, a new initiative. Once we've made our case, we then have the opportunity to move on to a decision point. And in that decision point, we, in an open-handed kind of way, get to say, all right, you have several options here. You can either adopt this new thing or you can reject it. It's your choice. But in doing so, understand that these are the foreseeable consequences of your decision. If we adopt it, we think we have this. If we don't adopt it, we think we'll have that. And part of the scenario I gave you yesterday from the Cokesbury decision, we played out all the scenarios that we knew to play out, all the things that we knew and had at our fingertips at the moment to say, if we adopt this proposal from the executive committee, we think this is going to be the outcome. If we don't adopt it, we think this will be the outcome. And because those of us who were in the room who'd been there for 8 years knew the full story, we could kind of do an integrity check and say, okay, are we getting the full picture? Do we really know all the pieces of detail? And to the best of our ability, we thought we did. Once the decision is made, then the implementation of that new thing begins, and then the confirmation of it simply says, it now becomes what's called embedded into the culture, embedded into our lifestyle. So it's not enough that I happen to get a new computer, unless I'm using it now and it's become second nature to me, I'm liable to keep it on the shelf, just like I did my iPad. Unless I get some real benefit from it, I'll just keep it in my closet and use it every once in a while, right? So that's part of the innovation process that allows us to think through the implications of it and to do the kind of connections that say, okay, how does that play out in real life and how does it really become part of me? And we may find after a while, I mean, there are on some products 90-day guaranteed money-back warranties, right? They know with the longer the warranty, money-back guarantee, the more possible it is, it'll take longer for folks to really be assimilated and embedded into that practice. And that's just a natural kind of phenomenon. Okay? Any questions about kind of the communication channel side of the change process? We had a change model that we worked with in Heath and Heath. This is the communication dynamic of a change process, not the change model itself. Okay? Make sense? And we looked yesterday at that sideways figure 8 to talk about one way to do the diagnosis. Diagnosis, change model, communication process. Those 3 facets. Okay? Make sense? Okay, good. I'd like to take us then for a few minutes towards a conversation on organizational culture and to give you some language and then an implication around that language. So here we go. Yesterday we looked at one map of what an organizational system looks like, the various facets of that system, whether it be strategy or conflict or HR or whatever it might be. This is another way to think about organizations, the kinds of subsystems that play out in them. Steve Stratton and I right now are working with our own church. The advantage of being a professor in a church is I can be an unpaid consultant and I can take all the blame and walk away. It works out pretty well. And Steve, because he has a gift set that I don't have, we've come at this thing together. I do very well around structural analysis. He does very well around the emotional analysis. And the two of us kind of balance each other out. So we're working right now in this situation trying to help the staff adjust to the exit. One of their prime staff members graduated, now is serving in Texas, and they're trying to do all the adjusting to that. How do they now reconfigure? How do they live that out together? How do they rebuild trust? You know, in group dynamics, whenever somebody is added or somebody is subtracted, dynamics start over again, right? You know that this principle? And you know that in those group dynamics, that the starting over again means you start going through the 4 stages of group formation. You will form, you will storm, you will norm, and you will perform. Okay? It's a classic General Electric language. The group comes together and forms. They then try to find out what piece of the pie each member of the group is going to have, so they storm and do some territorial kind of work together to see what part or contribution they'll be making. Then they will finally normalize, get those social norms in place for the group, and then once they've got those social norms in place, then they're able to really be productive. Then they'll start to see the fruit of their labors. Okay? So Bill had just left, and they were now back into the whole process again. Who are we now without the critical role that he was playing, and how do we now live into that? So as we did that, I knew that I could handle the structural subsystem pretty well, and probably the managerial, but I needed someone like Steve to handle the kind of psychosocial pieces, and he has a great way to pick up on the goals and values piece as well. He has some antenna that again, I don't have. I assume things, he actually drills deeper. So in understanding that the various systems, we knew that our work is going to have to be that of getting a feel for how the group now is framing reality, how they perceived the church today as opposed to a year ago. Okay? Again, every time there's a change in a situation, the expectations get renegotiated. And so how we frame it, how we understand it, gets renegotiated. About a month ago, a little over a month ago, I was minding my own business on a trip to Atlanta for a conference, the Catalyst Conference. And on Friday morning, I'd be coming home that night. On Friday morning, my wife sent me a text and said, 2 surprises waiting for you when you come home. I'm going, I don't think I like this idea. 2 surprises waiting for when I get home. So I got home, and she went and did it. She went and got 2 5-month-old kittens and landed them inside the house. Now you need to know the history here. Historically, I've been allergic to cats. And historically, the one cat that we did have, more accurately my daughters and my wife had, was an outside cat, just to spare my allergies. And that cat died about 1.5 years ago. And Yvonne had been talking about it, she'd been researching it, I could see it coming, but sure enough, we have Precious and Bentley now inside the house. Well, because they're inside the house, I need a sanctuary. I need a safe place where I can go away from the cats and not have to worry about sneezing or whatever else. And we didn't grow up with pets, it's just my cultural background. It's not that I don't like animals, it's just I don't want animals. It's crazy. So we're now reframing reality inside my home. And the spoken agreement, oh, unspoken. The unspoken agreement is that in the bedroom, our bedroom door will be closed, and I can go to the bedroom and sit in the chair and watch TV or do my work, whatever it might be, and no cats inside. Someone forgot to tell the cats that, though. And whenever the door is even left halfway open, whatever, they just come pouncing in. And they think I'm going to pay attention to them, and I really don't care to. So just, all this kind of reframing now, what's the new norm, right? What's the new norm in our household? It's amazing how much more often the girls come home now to pet the cats. I mean, it kind of reframes things for us. So the framing is the way in which we sort out reality. It's our filter. And as we try to experience that reality, we start to create pictures and categories and a common language. So just for a little quick experiment, think about the colloquialisms that you grew up with or you might still use. So for example, when the international students are on campus with us in the Beeson Center, I've got to, on a regular basis, watch my language with them. Because if I say to them, okie dokie, and they don't understand what okie dokie is, they don't know if I'm mad at them, cussing them out, or what the deal is, right? So I've got to say to them, okie dokie, how I learned it anyways, came from Indiana, happened to come into our family through a friend, and it means everything is okay. Okay, that translation is delivered. Generally, they think it's a positive phrase. That's all right, good. And those other colloquialisms that I'm so used to using, it'll raise the hair on the back of your neck, for example. Tastes so good you want to slap your mama. I mean, some of our colloquialisms, right? The language that we use to folks who are not used to our language, they're just kind of, you know, I'm not quite sure what you're saying here. What are you trying to do to me, right? So as we reframe reality, the kind of words that we use, the language that we use, will absolutely start to influence how we perceive that reality. You have some other good colloquialisms you want to share? I can take a dictionary and just kind of catch some more. Well, what are some from your area? What ones do you use?
How about clear as mud? Clear
as mud, yep. Yep. Other colloquialisms?
When we moved here, we had a sign.
Not that you see that public, yeah.
That said, the Actually's blood runs orange.
Ah.
And we had an international student who came to ask me about that. And about that time, my husband had busted his toe and came out to show me. And she was very interested to see if his blood literally was orange.
Yep.
So. Yep,
absolutely. Yeah, we start to depict things that kind of hook our imagination of our international friends. Other colloquialisms?
Flatter than a flitter.
Ah, yep, yep. Other phrases?
Nutty of a squirrel turd.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm from Texas, and we'll say it's not my first rodeo.
Not your first rodeo, absolutely. Yeah, right. And every culture has them. And all of us have to be translated into them. That's just normal.